All right, so now we're going to be covering our block and reverse punch combinations. Now this block reverse punch combination is going to be starting from a fighting stance. So we're going to get our hands up right here. Now what this is meant to do is to help you learn the back stance to front stance transitions. Because our foundation Hapkido is not primarily based on forms, without those forms, these hip transitions can be lost. But these hip transitions are paramount in teaching good foundational movement to be able to transfer power into punching from blocking. So what we're going to be doing is some of these blocks are going to be closed-handed, some of these blocks are going to be open-handed, but they are based on the 12 blocks. So we're using one hand for now, which is going to be our front hand, and then you can switch sides and practice the other side later. And the other hand is going to be punching. So instead of 12 blocks, it's going to be 6. So we're starting off with our low block first from this fighting stance. And so we're covering motion and going into that back stance and hitting that low block. Now my arm is bent slightly, but it's extended. I'm making sure that I'm covering my ribs. And then from this position, I'm transitioning to that front stance and throwing that reverse punch and hands back. So again, make sure you cover all of this circle, all of your body here to the side of your ribs. 1, transitioning to that back stance, knees are bent, and 2, we're getting that reverse punch. Notice that my hand comes back to my face and hands back up. Now number 2 is going to be a middle block, so we're doing the same thing. 1, we're moving to this back stance. Now when I did this middle block, I moved it to my center line and then turned my hips slightly, and this moves a punch offline. So again, 1 and then 2. We're moving to that front stance transition with the reverse punch and hands are up. So one more time, 1, 2. Now, high block, we're going to be moving forward as we're high blocking. When I move back, the arc will sometimes come down if somebody's hitting over, like with an overhand. That arc will come down and miss my arm and will hit me in the face anyway, so we have to make sure we move forward on our high blocks. So we're doing the same thing. 1, now notice I still have that high block, or I'm sorry, that back stance here with that high block. Now from here, I'm making that hip transition to that front stance, hands are up and back. So again, 1, I lower and I move my front foot in and my back leg is bent. Knee sideways, front knees forward, 2, and hip transition to good front stance, hands are up. So now the next one is going to be a knife hand, which is naturally open. So it's 1, notice I slide back slightly. I have that back stance here, my shoulders are at a 45-degree angle, my thumb is tucked in, my fingers are together. From this position, 2, I make that hip transition to front stance and hands back up. Remember, make sure that you're working this motion as you're doing that knife hand. So we're going 1 and 2, focus on good form. So now the next one is going to be a palm block. So we have 1, which is the low block, 2, which is a middle block, 3, which is a high block, and then after that, we have our knife hand. Now we're going into palm block. Same thing, we're doing back stance motion, 1, and when we do this, notice that I get my hips back on this one, and I make sure that my arm is not going down this way, where I'm blocking primarily with the palm. I want to let my arm be like a windshield wiper here, so that way if I ever have to turn and use the forearm, I have that structure. So we're in this position, 1, and transition 2 to front stance. So again, 1, slow, and 2, last one, 1, 2. Now from here, we're going into the outward block, same thing. It's 1, and notice that it's somewhat high. So my hand should be with my thumb even to my widow's peak here. My elbow's down, I'm not covering too much distance. It's right here, and then from this position, I'm shifting into front stance with that reverse punch. One more time, 1 and 2. So now, all the way through, all 6 of them, it's starting off with low block, hana, and shift. Middle block, tol, and shift. High block, hana, and shift. Knife hand hana, and shift. Palm block hana, and shift. Hour block hana, and shift. And then, chario, hangme. And those are your basic block, reverse punch combinations with your hip transitions. Really focus on the stance and the hip transitions so that way those particular movements don't get lost since we aren't focusing primarily on forms. Thank you very much.